If I remember correctly, this happened in January or February 2024. I was visiting family in southern France, and I didn't want to stay at their place, even if they offered, for personal reasons that I won't share here. Note that I visit them quite often, and usually last minute, so I would never book the same place, and I would sometimes book a hotel room, which was more expensive, but better for me, as I don't necessarily want to socialize with the hosts. Even when I would book Airbnbs, I would always search for flats or studio flats, and not a room in the flat/house where other people live, as I want to be on my own, so this is an important criterion for me. So I booked this Airbnb within walking distance to where my family members stay, and it looks very nice on paper. I think it was marketed as a house or ground floor flat, with access to a yard and a garden. So I go to that place with my suitcase, waiting in front of the house. I contact the landlord, who should give me the keys, but he's late. I spent at least 1 hour waiting outside, and I'm trying to be patient, realizing at least the neighborhood is pretty nice and seems safe, even if I need to walk through areas that are slightly dodgy to get there. From where my relatives stay, the landlord finally arrives. He seems like a fairly good man and apologizes profusely, saying he was in another town visiting his cousin or friends, and time flew by. First red flag. He says they were drinking and didn't have time to sober up, so he had to speed on the highway on his motorbike while being tipsy or drunk. He stops and asks me half-jokingly, not to say that in my review, I get a bit serious and tell him he shouldn't be drinking and driving, but he says he really didn't want to make me wait further. I tell him I won't flag that in my review. Spoiler alert, I will, but I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. This guy is nice otherwise, and seems trustworthy, very chatty and open to socializing. And frankly, I was just happy I could finally get in and drop my stuff. The second red flag is when he tells me I will be living in a small flat adjacent to the bigger house he lives in. But I shouldn't worry because I would have my own place, own bathroom, own kitchen, etc. I didn't like that too much. But I actually think it might be good because I am not super comfortable being on my own and in ground floor accommodation, knowing anyone can get into the yard and access the front door. I guess you could say I'm paranoid. So knowing that someone I quote-unquote know is close by in case something happens gives me a sense of safety. But I was wrong. This shows mostly when I'm in the bedroom, as I see through the windows that it's clearly at a lower level. Next red or rather yellow flag is when he shows me a door close to the bedroom, which is the connecting door between my part and his house. I was kind of expecting that, but thought he might need to at least cross the yard or access through the front door to get into my part of the house. He says his door stays closed and is locked anyway. That is a warning for me not to try to open it, but more like, you'll notice there is the door, it's useless for you, and what's beyond it is not part of what you're renting. We chat a little bit, too long for my taste because I was tired and also still annoyed at his lateness, and I wasn't in the mood to socialize. He gives me his phone number because he said the Airbnb chat feature isn't that good, and that it's easier to use WhatsApp, and then he leaves. I start to settle down, open my suitcase and get changed before leaving to visit the family. I then go back to the place in the evening and decide to have a shower. If I remember correctly, what I'm saying next happened before I took a shower, because I remember locking the bathroom door, which I never do when I know I'm on my own, and I recall being quite anxious when taking the shower. So the biggest red flag before the last drop. I'm sitting on the bed and I hear a knock and someone saying my name. 2 seconds later, before I get the chance to answer or even understand where the noise comes from, I hear keys turning in a lock and a door opening. As you might have guessed, it's the connecting door next to the bedroom. The guy enters and says he can't find his phone and that he might have left it downstairs. I would have noticed there's literally nothing except my open suitcase on a couch in the bedroom. He still gets in, speaking a lot and very fast while I'm sitting there, not fully realizing what's happening and not having a chance to tell him to leave. He looks around the flat, and obviously doesn't find the phone. Then he says sorry and probably asks if everything is fine, if I had dinner or something like that, and then he leaves again. At that point, I'm really wondering if I should stay or not, since I know you get refunded only if you cancel 2 nights in advance. I just thought I would lose the money for the night that has already started because it was already after 11 p.m. and the following one, knowing I had booked at least 4 nights. I then go back to the bedroom, get dressed as fast as I can just in case, sit down and think. I decide that I will just stay for the night, and I'll probably be less paranoid in the morning if I'm still alive. That's when I notice the chairs in the bedroom. There are 2, and one of them has ropes tied around the armrests. The chairs are in good shape, and the rope is definitely not there to keep the armrests fixed to the chair, as they are just loose. To this day, I have no idea why they were there. Even trying to use the ropes one way or another, the handle can still go down enough to open the door easily. I think that at least if I leave them in front of the door, I'll hear if someone tries to open it. But the door opens the other way, and in any case, I didn't know what I'd do even if the noise woke me up. Again, I'm clearly paranoid and anxious, but living alone abroad, my motto is to never ever take risks for my own safety, as I'm usually the only one who can save myself. So it's better to avoid any tricky situation. It doesn't mean I'd never go out, but I wouldn't get drunk around people I don't trust, and I would take a cab if I feel unsafe going home on my own after midnight. I now live in a city that's rather safe, but has had too many bad encounters. So I decided to call my brother, who came to pick me up around midnight for me to spend the rest of my stay at his place. About 2 weeks ago, I booked an Airbnb in another country. I was going there for a concert. The room was cheap, so I knew I wasn't going to stay in a 5-star hotel, but it was only for 1 night, so I didn't mind as long as I had a bed. To start off, it already wasn't a great trip because my data roaming apparently didn't work in that country at all. I logged into a cafe Wi-Fi and planned my route in advance as best as I could. Managed to be at the house in time, rang the only bell, and waited. Nobody came out. I repeatedly rang it and waited for 5 minutes. I noticed the door had a slot for mail and looked through it. I was shocked to see an entrance that looked like an abandoned barn. A super dusty couch right in front of the door, pieces of furniture covered in cloth, very dirty and extremely old. I usually love old houses, but that just didn't look like a house that was in use or prepared for guests at all. I wondered if I was at the wrong house and what to do now, as a super old unwashed looking guy walked towards the door from the street. I asked him if he knew where the errand was. He mumbled something, which I interpreted as positive, so I asked him if he was Tim, my host. He said yes, and opened the door for me. Well, I already described the entrance. The centerpiece was definitely this super old, creaky staircase that led to the upper part of the house. I followed him upstairs. He was heaving and coughing and stinking of cigarettes, which wasn't exactly pleasant, but all right. The second floor was also abandoned looking, super dark with clustered furniture hung with cloth and randomly thrown together, and a super creepy curtain that I couldn't catch a glimpse behind. Another stair up, and we're in my hallway, which was honestly the worst one. Cracks in the walls, old frugal paintings, and crosses hung up next to them. It seriously looked like the set of a horror movie. Everything looked super dirty. He showed me to my bedroom, which was honestly okay. There were just a lot of creepy dolls on the shelves that threw me off, but the bed seemed fine. I asked him if they had Wi-Fi, and he said no, which really sucked. I really hoped they would have, because that meant I would have no way to communicate in there. I also asked him when checkout was the next day. He then said it doesn't matter. He then dragged himself up to the 4th story, which was in complete pitch black darkness, by the way. So that gave me very weird vibes. I definitely didn't want to get into the shower, so I just quickly changed and charged my phone. When I went to the bathroom, I realized that I didn't even notice the creepiest part. There were no locks at all, not for the bathroom, and not for my room. I also noticed that there were so many half-used items that someone who looked like the guest before me had left there, like shower gels, toothbrushes, and toothpaste. A random lash curler just lay abandoned on the shelf. Not like a here you go for your use in case you forgot yours way, but it just looked like someone left it, and nobody bothered to clean it. I already made my mind up that I would definitely not stay the night in this house. My mind was just spinning scenarios. What if all these products were left by the people before me? And why did nobody leave horrendous reviews? I was super spooked.